Welcome in. It is a live edition of the North Side Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Widmeyer, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. If you're watching via our YouTube channel, which is the only option right now, we're appreciative for all the support. Go ahead and click the subscribe button as we try to build this bad boy up. Jason, a lot to talk about, and we kind of wanted to go live with this episode as a lead into the Cubs-Angels game tonight, which is at 6:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. Weather might make it a little more tricky. I was telling you off the air before we got going, I'm in Wisconsin, and it has been loud thunderstorms all day, hoping that it clears out for Cubs-Angels tonight because, as you rightfully noted, second series of the season, and you have the Angels coming from California. Not sure how many more times they're going to be making the trip to Chicago. Obviously, they'll have one series with the White Sox on the south side of things, but not a typical trip that the Angels are making to come to Wrigley Field. So hopefully they get
scheduling choice.
Yeah, so hopefully for March too, right?
For March. Yeah. It's March 31st. Who could have foreseen that the weather in Chicago was less than perfect?
Yeah, so we've got Cubs Angels tonight. We'll finish up kind of previewing that as Jameson Taillon's scheduled to be on the bump for the Cubbies in Game 2 of the series. You can see it if you're watching our via our YouTube channel, our layout to the right, what we're going to talk about. And I'm telling you, Jason, as we start with Edward Cabrera in his first start in a Chicago Cubs uniform, and I would venture to guess, and it's kind of a ricochet shot at the Miami Marlins, but that had to be probably his, in terms of a home start, the most fans he's ever performed against in the majors for a home start, because the Marlins notoriously have rather low attendance for their home games. And so it's Edward Cabrera's first start last night in a Chicago Cubs uniform. I thought the stuff was nasty. The command at times, maybe not fully intact, but it's his first start. It's March. Maybe there were some butterflies, a little jitters going, but I thought the stuff for Edward Cabrera was really, really good. Just one hit, one walk allowed. And I thought, on a night where maybe the command wasn't totally, honed in on for Cabrera to only allow one walk, I mean, it almost sounds like I'm just nitpicking, if anything else. Angels registered 40 swings. Cabrera got 15 whiffs on said swings. The fastball was humming around 96, 97 for the most part. Fastball usage was way up for Edward Cabrera compared to what we saw with the Marlins. And anyone who's a Cubs fan, obviously, I mean, you're way on the analytics side of things too, Jason. That's not a surprise. The Cubs are throwing fastballs more than...
They love that four seam.
They're throwing it more than damn near any other team in baseball. So
not anybody, yeah.
I went back and I looked at his fastball usage. I just looked at the averages. I probably should have dove into it maybe a little bit more, but I looked at his averages year over year with the Marlins and his fastball usage, Jason, and then how much he used it last night, start one with the Cubs. And it was notable. It was a notable uptick in the amount of usage he got out of that four-seamer. The curveball for Edward Cabrera, it might not be like the biggest key for his success, but being able to throw that thing in the mid to high 80s will never cease to like blow my mind. I thought the curveball was sharp in a couple of instances against the Angels last night. I mean, I don't know how anyone can come away with anything else than just thrilled with Edward Cabrera's first start in a Chicago Cubs uniform. And I'll ask you what you thought of it and what you made of his first start last night.
I mean, it was pretty fantastic. 15 whiffs on the game, which is huge. That's I think the Cubs only had 3 games last year, like from any starter, where they had more than like 13 whiffs, and they've already had 3 so far this year, or maybe it's 5 or something like that. Can't remember the exact number, but it's pretty low. It's in the single digits. They've already had 3 this year between Matthew Boyd, between Shota Imanaga, and between Edward Cabrera last night. And Cabrera did 15 whiffs on 40 swings. That's an absurd percentage. A lot of times when we're seeing 15 whiffs, it's they threw a lot of pitches, and he didn't. He didn't throw that many pitches. You mentioned the four-seam fastball usage was up. The sinker usage gone. Basically didn't throw the sinker last night. We're gonna have to see how the trends work. Whether this was like a specific Angels thing or this is the new Edward Cabrera. Kind of hard to figure out. one of the things that we should probably pay attention to a little bit is a different pitcher that the Cubs had last year, but that's Colin Ray, who's still here. And one of the things that we saw with Colin Ray early is that as the season started, he basically scrapped the sinker, lowered the arm slot. And they were talking about it on the broadcast last night that allowed him to throw it harder, looser, and more comfortably than he'd ever thrown before. But then if we dive into the actual season, so if we actually look into, his month to month of 2026, what we actually see is that we see that his numbers, the sinker kind of upticked as the year went on, and the four seam kind of decreased just a little bit. So it was, I guess, one of these things that we should maybe see with Edward Cabrera. Maybe we see, a lot of four seams early as the league begins to readjust to that four seam. The sinker comes back. And it's like you can almost like readjusting against the hitters a little bit. Matt Trueblood mentioned it on Northside Baseball today. His slider had a different shape, less vertical movement, more sharp cutterish, which is Cub coded. Cubs love cut fastballs and cutters and things like that. It's a great pitch to throw against lefties. So throwing those against lefties is a good thing. And if we go into the actual data on how he was using his pitches last night, you can see that the changeup was a pitch that he was throwing glove side, like his arm side. So that was a pitch he was going to throw to his arm side, and that slider was kind of going away. You look at the breakdown of his thing of his pitch map. It was the two pitches were really playing off of each other. That curve, that changeup's going to kind of go in on the hands of a righty, out away from a lefty, and then that slider cuttery thing that he was throwing last night kind of did the opposite, which gives him control of the bottom part of the zone with two different pitches. One that's breaking, glove side, one's breaking arm slide. And then he used that fastball kind of in that top upper third. And then you throw in an 88 mile an hour curveball into there. Matt also kind of talked about the numbers of an 88 mile an hour curveball and just kind of league wise how devastating these things are. If he can get that pitch up there sometimes, that's going to be a nearly unhittable pitch. His changeup's nearly unhittable too. So we saw, I think, a very good performance by Edward Cabrera last night. The Angels they're not a terrible offensive team when you look up and down their lineup. Zach Neto's a pretty good hitter. Nolan Shawnow is a pretty good hitter. Mike Trout's looking pretty good to start the season. Joe Adell can teach you a home run. Jorge Soler can hit home runs. They're not necessarily the worst lineup that you're going to see on a night-to-night basis. It's not Dodgers or anything like that, but I don't think that when the season ends, we're going to look back on the Angels and say this is necessarily like a bottom five offense or anything like that Cabrera carved up last night. So I really like that. I thought he looked pretty good last night. A little iffy, kind of with the strikes, maybe a little bit early, but it was a good performance. It was a good performance by him. So I was really happy to see that.
I had a buddy text me, I think Owen Casey's walk-off homer for the Marlins was on Sunday, I believe.
Yep.
Against Colorado. I had a buddy who's a huge Cubs fan, like you and I, and he texted me. I'm talking mere minutes after that walk-off by Casey Jason, and he's a little cynical when it comes to the Cubs with certain decisions. And minutes after Owen Casey hit that walk-off homer, I get a text from one of my buddies who says, "Sweet, could have been our starting outfielder this year." And I texted him back and I said, deep breaths, relax, just wait till Edward Cabrera's first start. Because he had asked me all about Edward Cabrera, what he needs to know, things of that nature. And I was crossing my fingers, Jason, and lead up to that first start. Like, man, I hope I didn't just tell my buddy, deep breaths, relax, wait for Edward Cabrera's first start after Owen Casey hits a walk-off, and then Cabrera goes out and gets shelled by the Angels. So I was very, very happy with his start last night against Mike Trout and company. And again, hopefully it's just a sign of things to come. I do like what you noted too, Jason. It's is this a sign of things to come with the fastball usage and the sinker just going away, or was this just matchup oriented with the Angels? I think maybe there's a happy medium between the two, because we know how much the Cubs want their pitchers to use that four-seamer. And so I would imagine that Edward Cabrera uses it a hell of a lot more than he did with the Marlins, but how much more, it's still way too small of a sample size, just one start, to come to any like concrete conclusions. But when the year comes and goes and we're turning the calendar from September to October, yeah, I'd be surprised if Edward Cabrera's fastball usage was the same as it was with the Marlins in year one with the Cubs, just because we know what they kind of like to cater to with their pitchers. So yeah, I think both of us were kind of in lockstep there overall. Just good stuff from Edward Cabrera, and he should be even more sharp and better with the command as the year carries along. I was really, really optimistic with what I saw. Northside Baseball Podcast Live Edition. Jason Ross, Mitch Widmeyer here with you. Cubs taking on the Angels, 6:40 p.m. Central Standard Time tonight. We'll finish up the show with that later on. Nico Hoerner, trade rumors heavy last year at the trade deadline, this offseason. What are the Cubs going to do with Nico Hoerner? A lot of people view him as like maybe not like a cornerstone, but certainly one of the pillars for the Cubs, right? Like Nico Hoerner, and he's been around for a while now, and he gets the extension, 6 years, $141 million, big ones, Jason, for Nico Hoerner. I think I'm going to have to look it up, but I believe I saw a fourth largest contract for a second baseman ever. I think that's what I saw. And Robinson Cano, still his contract from years ago still takes the cake. I'll eat some crow here too, Jason, because I've hammered it home before about some frustration. I will say, as you know, from us doing this weekly podcast dating back to last year, I've never been, just pounding the table about the Cubs' refusal to spend. But I've brought it up how there's some frustration that I've had as a fan with what appears to be hesitancy to spend, whether it's free agency or taking a big swing at a trade and then having to fork over money. I mean, I've got to eat some crow because I'm looking at a contract that they gave to Alex Bregman this offseason. I'm looking at an extension for PCA recently, and now another extension for Nico Hoerner. There's a full no trade clause in it, which is cool for the player. That's awesome for Nico to sort of have that comfort down the road, like for the duration of this thing. Jed Hoyer called it, and I quote, a super easy decision, which is, you want to see that. And I'm just looking at a picture where I see Dansby Swanson locked in through 2029, Bregman 2030, Jason, and now PCA and Nico Hoerner locked in with their new extensions through 2032 with the Chicago Cubs. Similar to what I said about Edward Cabrera's first start, like I don't know how anyone looks at it and comes away like, whatever. Nico Hoerner's extension, I don't know how anyone, looks away at this and is like, whatever. It's a big deal, and the Cubs now have their Gold Glove second baseman locked in for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two parts of it for me. I think if you look at the contract extension in a vacuum, I think it's good value. I was kind of running some numbers the other day on Northside on it, and the Fangraphs had a great article that was put out. Oh, I'm gonna go make sure I can cite the actual author on this one because I had looked it up. So hold on the actual sourcing, but basically it was looking at how much teams are playing for wins this year. And as we're kind of looking at that number, the interesting thing that teams are doing is they're not all players are being treated as if they're the same. A 1-year contract for a player who's a middle reliever is not getting the same kind of a contract that, say, a 2-win player that you kind of average out like Nico Hoerner is getting. And when we look at that numbers in the aggregate, and that was written by Ben Clemens. Sorry, I wanted to make sure that I gave Ben Clemens some love on that because it's a great article. It's by Ben Clemens. But Ben talked about how teams are, if you kind of project a player out at 2 wins average per year, the teams are averaging about $12 million plus on each win that they're buying. So a win for a star player is more expensive than a win for a bit player, which makes sense. If we're thinking about, just like basic concepts of supply and demand, star players are in demand and the star players are not as easily found. There's a low supply of star players, high demand. Everybody wants a really good player, right? You can find and I don't want to shoot a no shot across the bow for Hobie Milner or something like that, but you can find a Hobie Milner every offseason for $4 million. He's a serviceable lefty. You can't be a good team without Hobie Milners, but also like, you could probably name off like 8 Hobie Milners off the top of your head right now, who's a fine lefty to have in the 7th inning, right? How many 4-win second basemen can you name? Not many. So when we look at that and we kind of convert out Nico Hoerner's contract, even if, you're doing like a low regression model of like, what you kind of expect him to be, basically, even like, which would eventually put him, it's like not a starting player by age 33, you'd average out that contract at about $140 to $160 million is what he should have gotten paid. If you look at real world money, got 135 million. It's at the very least, it's market equivalent. I think if you have a rosy projection on that, it's surplus value, and you don't really find that on 6-year extensions. So I think on a vacuum, like the contract. If you want like a but, I can give a but, and that is when you look at the infield, figuring out what the plan is with a bunch of players who are going to be over 30 together is going to be kind of questionable. How many years is Dansby Swanson going to play shortstop? I like Dansby Swanson a lot. I don't think he's necessarily going to have to be pulled off of shortstop, by 2027 or something like that. But there aren't a lot of 35-year-olds playing shortstop. The fallback was, well, you put Nico Hoerner at, Nico Hoerner's a free agent at the end of the season. Dansby Swanson slides over to second base. You get a new shortstop down the road. Problem solved. That's not going to be available now because the Cubs are going to have Bregman, Hoerner, and Swanson, who are all going to be aging together. So what they do at shortstop, I think, is a little bit of a question down the road. That's not me saying don't sign that contract. This is how big market teams should act. If a big market team isn't afraid to worry about 4 years down the road because they're worried about being good now, that's great. And if the Cubs are going to continue to act like a big market team, all these concerns are moot. Who cares, right? They've got a great infield right now. That's all that really matters. I think the one but that I would have, again, is that kind of looking at the long term, right? That infield long term. But I think Nico Hoerner probably ages pretty well. Age 32 seems to be kind of an important number for bat speed. Tango Tiger, that's Tom Tago, a wonderful kind of father on a lot of these early baseball like kind of analytics since the early aughts. Has just really kept it up. He's just awesome. Put out a regression model on bat speed 2024, and it's kind of stuck. But like 31 to 32 is where we see bat speed decline, and that's an issue. But Nico Hoerner doesn't have great bat speed. And that's kind of something we see with a lot of high contact hitters. They trade power, bat speed, for contact. And you increase your contact by keeping the bat in the zone longer. So you have to swing slower. It's just kind of basic principle right there. My bat is in the hit zone for longer, then I'm going to make more contact. And so if our concern about Nico hitting 32 and 33 is that bat speed is going to die down, that's already not his strong suit. I think he's going to be fine. He can probably overcome that. His legs, defense, a little bit more iffy. So we'll see. I think it's a solid B+ though. I like it. You're not going to find a lot of contracts that have built-in pretty obvious surplus value. I think if you regress Nico Hoerner starting at a 4-win player next year as opposed to a 3.5-win player, there's easy money to be made there from a surplus value on the contract. He's a good player, and I think the only concern that I have is that kind of like long-term look on the infield. A little bit of a skepticism that the Cubs are can continue to play big market baseball. But if the Cubs are kind of committed to big market baseball, being a top 5 to 7 spender pretty often every season, then this is just kind of what you do. There's going to be a year or two where you have Nico Hoerner as a bench player and he's going to be making $22 million and you shrug your shoulders, and that's just big boy baseball. That's what you do. The Brewers can't do that. The Cubs can. If they can act like that, then you're in a pretty good place with that contract. So I like it. I probably have a little hesitation behind it. So it's not like a slam dunk like I think Pete Croce was. I mean, it was pretty hard to go wrong buying out 4 years and 2 years of free agency on Pete. Little bit more hesitation on Nico. Still think it's pretty good, but that's kind of where I'm sitting on it.
There were a couple of things you said that I wanna hit on. First off, the big market baseball phrase that you use. If the Cubs are going to start this big market baseball idea and lean into it, I don't think there should be any reservations, right, about the Nico
Right.
contract, because they're just going to keep acting like a big market baseball team, which
Yeah, that's
is
how you do that.
what a lot of fans have been clamoring for. The second thing you brought up, and I think you just mentioned it quickly, but I think it's very important, Jason, is Nico's game, his style of play, is one that strikes me as someone that is not going to age poorly. I just go back to like when his name was brought up at the deadline last year, this offseason, and some trade rumors. And, if we want to, go across to a different sport, like Giannis's name has been brought up in trade rumors for a couple of years now. And one of the big hesitancies that people have is, how does his game age? He's, about 6'11", 7 feet, can't really shoot, just bulldozes his way through the lane, bull in a china shop, multiple leg, knee, calf injuries the last few years. How does that age for Giannis as he's in his 30s now? And there's like serious reservations about that. When I look at Nico Hoerner and the Cubs locking him into this 6-year extension, and I believe he's 28 right now. I think 28, somewhere around there, right around there.
Yeah, he's 28. He will turn 29 not too far from now. I looked at it when I was doing my contract projections. I'll get you exactly. He will be 29 in just like under 2 months. He's 28 years, 10 months, 18 days.
Perfect. Okay, so 28, set to be 29 years old during the season, but has a game where, contact hitter, short, compact, good second baseman, Gold Glove caliber. He just has a game that strikes me as it will age well. I don't think Nico Hoerner is going to be the guy that turns 31, 32 years old and you start to worry like, oh, that body's going to start breaking down or the wheels are going to start coming off the bus. He kind of has the build, the frame, and his style of play suits him well for someone that should age pretty good, I would imagine, right? Like injuries can pop up whenever.
I think his bat will age fine.
Yes.
Like I'm a little bit more concerned with the total package. He is somebody who for the last 4 years has produced 3.4 base running runs, 6.9 base running runs, 5 base running runs, 4.5 base running runs. This is somebody who adds value with his legs. I mean, we can't really expect that at age 31 and 32 that this guy's going to be out there stealing 30 bags a season, that he's going to be kind of maybe a great base running value addition guy. We're going to probably see that decline. His glove and his range are excellent. He just had an arm injury last year. So like at some point that's going to die off. He's not going to be, he's not going to probably lead, second base at OAA, some of these seasons. So I think if you want a concern, it's that he's a player who's probably pretty reliant on his legs. And his arm strength is already bottom 7th percentile. And this is coming off of an arm injury last year. Maybe he was, kind of worried about letting the big dog eat last year, and he didn't really want to throw it as hard. He's second baseman, so we're not asking shortstop athleticism from him. So I think you can push and pull either direction you want to go. I think you can kind of lean into it however you want to. If you're somebody who isn't excited about this, you're going to say he's a glove first player who is highly reliant on his legs, and he had an arm injury last year. And I don't know what 32, 33, and 34 is going to look like. If you want to be on the rosy optimistic side, you're going to say this is a player who has not as an offensive game that isn't relying on bat speed. So by age 32, we're probably a little less concerned about the fall off on the bat speed. He has been, over the course of his career, incredibly consistent. Between 2021 and 2025, his lowest WRC plus was a 102 and his highest was a 109. So we're talking about somebody who is always pretty good offensively. So we probably shouldn't see a big fall off there. He makes incredible contact. His slugging percentage, his ISO, they're all kind of just similar. It's just incredibly consistent. His WOBA and his ex-WOBA are kind of basically in the same place every year. So you look at those things and you say, I think this is somebody who's going to age gracefully as an offensive second baseman. He's still going to be like average to above average there. So even when he loses some glove and he loses some base running, I can still find a 2.5, 3-win player in there. So that's kind of the ways that I look at it from the two sides. Like I said, I think when I math out the contract, I find surplus value. And if I math out the contract and I find surplus value, you're usually in a pretty good place. And as long as the Cubs are going to remain committed to spending, kind of hard not to complain. With the no trade clause, the one thing to add here is he was going to get 10-5 rights after the third year anyways. So really it's like a 3-year no trade clause. And
which is like, why would they trade him anyways within the next 3 years?
They weren't really going to trade him then anyway. So
when he's in the prime of his career still.
Yeah. So, and if you were somebody who's like, I hate no trade clauses. Well, they really give him a no trade clause. They weren't going to trade him in 27, 28, 29 anyways. And if they wanted to trade him after that, he's got a no trade clause with 10-5 rights. So it wouldn't matter. So, that part, is kind of a whatever for me. Like I said, I kind of give it a B+. I'm in a good place for it. If you told me for sure that the Cubs won't care about the contract down the road, probably give it like an A, because I think the money's good. I think on the open market, this is somebody you could probably justify playing $140 to $160 million. The Cubs got him at $135. He's not going to come out and say that they gave him a hometown discount, but when you look at contracts and what teams are paying, I think the Giants would have given this guy 6 years, 150, maybe 155, 160. Like you could argue that pretty easily that he would have been worth that kind of money if you have a pretty solid progression model on him. So I think there's surplus value in there, and you don't find that often.
Northside Baseball Podcast, Game.Film says go Cubs go. Thanks for the stream.
Hey, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Early thoughts on the Cubs, Jason. I'll say briefly too. Losing 2 of 3 to the Nationals, who are probably a bottom 2-3 team in the National League this year. Not ideal, less than ideal, but you play 162 for a reason. I saw some insane clickbait, and I'm not even going to name the station, but there was a radio host claiming after the loss on opening day, Jason, that game 2 of the season was a must-win for the Cubs, and they were being serious. There was no exaggeration. I'm not kidding. It was not exaggeration, because my first thought was like, this can't be real. And then this host went off on like a long monologue about how you can't lose 2 in a row to the Nationals to start your season. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, we're doing this already. And you know what those people are trying to do? They're trying to get us to bring it up and clicks and views. And that's why I'm not going to say the name of the station or the name of the host. So obviously, you give up 18 runs in a 3-game set to Washington and you lose 2 of 3. It's not ideal, but it is a long season. Bregman had the 2-homer game, albeit in a loss. That was sweet. I love what I saw from Cade Horton. He gave up a line drive opposite field homer to James Wood. Outside of that, I thought he was sharp. Was it Cade Horton that we saw when he was really in a groove last year? No, but it's his first start of the season. And I keep having these. I brought this up last week, Jason. What this could become as a duo of Cade Horton and Edward Cabrera. Like, I'm super, super giddy and smitten on what that could become if both of them reach their full potential with the Cubs. So I thought Cade Horton was good. Edward Cabrera was awesome, as we talked about already. And I saw your article, actually, Jason, and I read it about Ian Happ's swing, especially from the right side of the plate. And that made me more optimistic as someone who, I'm not an Ian Happ hater by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm someone who's, I think I've been a little more hesitant on him throughout the years, recognizing him as a damn good baseball player and a damn good Chicago Cub, but never stretching it out to the point that some have is viewing him as like a cornerstone of a team that you can build around. I've never gone that far, but I read your article about his swing, and I'll let you talk about that too. And it just made me more optimistic about someone who's, been around the block for so many years now, and he's still tinkering, still trying to get better, still altering things, willing to alter things to try to get just a little bit better on the margins, which, you get into the postseason and that could make all the difference for you if you're a veteran like Ian Happ. So those are my early thoughts on the Cubs. Yeah, losing 2 out of 3 to the Nats stinks, but I don't care. It's not the end of the world. Bregman 2-homer game. Like what I saw from Cade Horton. Love what I saw from Edward Cabrera. And then Ian Happ from the right side of the plate after reading your article gives me a lot of optimism.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with kind of the losing 2 out of 3 with the Nationals. Good teams lose to bad teams when you play 162 games. You probably didn't know this, but the Dodgers went 1-5 against the Angels last year. The Angels suck. I mean, we saw them they were sucked last year. They were bad. They had 72 wins. They were a bad baseball team. The Dodgers were a great baseball team. They lost, and it wasn't like back-to-back. One of the series was a 2 out of 3 loss at home, and then they got swept in Los Angeles in August. So, I just these things happen, and baseball fans just in general, get a grip. There's 162 games. Like I saw what it was like a Instagram reel or a TikTok that my partner showed me, and it was like, how sports fans and all the other sports react to like losing one of their games, and God forbid a baseball team lose one of 162. People freak out. I mean, just freak out. And we have got to get a grip. There's 162 baseball games. If the Cubs win 100 games, they're going to lose 62 of them. Like, there are going to be 62 nights, and some of those games are going to lose to the Nationals. They're going to get swept by a bad team at some point. They're going to lose a series that you say good teams can't. Yes, they can. It happens every year. The World Series team every year loses to bad baseball teams all the time. I mean, constantly. So, like, all right, would it have been great to beat the Nationals 2 out of 3? Sure. The wind was weird. It was terrible. Like just it was a weird weekend. It's a weekend in March. You got to let it go. So I'm gonna let that go. It was Saturday was a fun game. Sunday and Thursday not so fun. It is what it is. It's just our life. Couple of things, that I'm thinking. I know people are going to kind of be upset about like Shota Imanaga giving up a home run, but the velocity was good. He had 13 swings and misses on the day. That's a really good number. He did everything that you would have looked from an under the hood aspect. And if Jomi and the home run that Weimer hit, it was like at his shoe tops. Like, I mean, it was really low. It was out of the zone. I looked at the StatCast. It was well out of the
year
zone.
Hot.
Yeah, hot.
I think I saw he reached base in his first 10 plate appearances.
Yeah, and
extending past the Cubs series.
Yeah, and then the Nationals went and they beat the pants off of Philadelphia last night. It's another team with playoff aspirations. So, like, I mean, just weird things happen in baseball games. So, yeah, I throw that kind of stuff out. Ian Happ with his swing, there's subtle changes. They're small, but small changes matter. If you're not aware, Ian Happ hit a home run that should have been a home run that should have landed on Waveland on opening night. I mean, absolutely crushed it. They were down 10-4 at the time. If you missed it, you missed it. It wasn't a fun time. It's the last out of the game. I think last out of the game, last out of the game was 9th inning. High inside fastball, 96 miles an hour off of a lefty, and Ian Happ doesn't get to that pitch. I looked at what his zone is last year. He doesn't get to that pitch last year, but he's a little deeper in the plate. He's a little bit more open, and I think it's allowing to clear his front side a little bit more from the right side against lefties. And if he can hit lefties like he hits righties, this is a really, really good baseball player. He's a good baseball player. Now he's a really, really good baseball player. Swing velocity's up. Last I checked, it was like 3 miles up on the season. It's early, so we don't want to read too much into that. These things can fluctuate, and we want to make sure that we have a larger sample size than like 15 swings right now. But that's good news that we're getting a little extra power into there. And it's kind of coming out. The home run he hit last night, for anybody who's kind of upset that he didn't get the home run on opening day, on opening day, that the wind pushed it back 113 feet. In the StatCast era, that's the largest wind intervention ever recorded by StatCast era. Largest wind intervention from projected distance to actual distance. He should have hit it on Waveland. Left fielder caught it in the middle of left field. I mean, just right there. So it's crazy. Last night, he got 40 feet of extra, and it barely cleared it. So he got one back last night. The wind giveth and the wind taketh. So, Ian Happ sitting at a pretty neutral 3 home runs right now, but he looks good. I like that. Overall, the lineup looks good. I know, they gave up a lot of runs against the Nationals. The wind was weird, but I like the at-bats I'm seeing. Very rarely are you looking at at-bats where you're like, ugh, that was ugly. Pico Armstrong worked a double-digit pitch walk last night. And I just a little bit I'm going to give Ryan Johnson some love from the Angels here for a little bit, because I love weird baseball players. I really love weird baseball players. They're some of my favorite. I've gone on rants on here about Brent Doyle before at his Fangraphs StatCast page. Austin Hedges is another one of my favorites. Just a putrid hitter, but still good enough defensively catcher wise, where he's been plus wins every time. Yeah. Doesn't matter. He's 40% worse hitting than anybody in the league, and he's still a good baseball player because he's so good defensively. And Ryan Johnson's another one that I really love. 6'6", throws sidearm 95 miles an hour, but his route to the major leagues is, I can't make this up. He pitched in high school. He was homeschooled. He pitched in a homeschool religious league, went to Dallas Baptist College, and then directly to the major leagues. That was his path to the major leagues. That was his path. And then to get there last night, they sent him back to high A for 12 starts last year, and then right back to the major leagues. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. The Angels are a weird organization with how they handle their prospects. Nobody else does it like they do. And like, I get it. Like, don't waste bullets. Like, don't waste bullets. But they're taking that to an extreme. And Ryan Johnson is he's a weird baseball guy. And he looks weird too, and in the best way. I've never. I mean it. I mean this the nicest. Brian, if you're out there listening, with the glasses, like 95 has never looked so uncool. But you're throwing 95, so who cares? Like it's awesome. I love Ryan Johnson. I watched him for 4 innings last night, however many threw. And he will be his StatCast page is going to be one I come back to a handful of times on the season. And I can't say that about a lot of people. I'm not going to come back and look at Irvin's Jake Irvin's StatCast page from the Nationals. Nope, not going to look at it one more time this year unless they face Jake Irvin again this year in their series against Washington. But I assure you, I'm going to pull up Ryan Johnson's page probably 5 to 7 times this year on my own without thinking about it because I'm just bored for a minute. And so credit to Ryan Johnson last night. That was a lot of fun. I know the Cubs beat up on him pretty good, but he's got a weird story, and I love weird stories like that. So I would throw a little love to him for a hot minute. But beyond that, I think the team looks good. Right field is clearly not pretty right now without Seiya Suzuki. Matt Shaw's they got mechanics wise. I don't think he's really going to get to a lot of power with his swing right now. Matt threw out a good article on there. Defensively, it's probably going to be a little bit of an adventure for a couple weeks. Michael Conforto, we're 2 games in. I don't want to release him today, but the Michael Conforto experience is already not looking good. His bat just looks like it's dragging through the zone. Bat speed doesn't look terrible, but he just doesn't look like he's got it right now. And the next time we see him, he's not starting tonight. Matt Shaw's starting tonight. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So no Mike tonight, but he just doesn't look right. I kind of want to see Dylan Carlson a little bit out there. Tonight's probably not the night. He's not somebody who's ever really hit right-handed pitching all that well. Jose Soriano's got a pretty nasty sinker. I don't think Matt Shaw's necessarily going to be much better, but if you get on base, maybe he can give you some base running. But right field's definitely kind of an issue until Seiya comes back. You can kind of see that right now. Once again, the Cubs have kind of built an iffy bench. Although I do think that once again that the plan is that the bench players are not going to become the starting players. I think that the bench players are kind of the bench players, and if there is like a long-term injury, not like say Suzuki's out for like 12 days or something like that, but it's long-term, it's going to be like Kevin Alcantara who comes up or something like that. Like we'll go with something like that. So that's kind of where I'm feeling right now. It is what it is on the losses with the Nationals. I'm not going to build too much animosity towards that. Weird things happen. The Cubs are going to win a series that they don't belong to win either. Like there's going to be a series against insert good team here where, the starting 3 pitchers are going to be like, you're going to miss Cade and Edward Cabrera. And it's going to be like, oh, you're going to
face like Yamamoto.
Yeah, and they're going to win 2 out of 3.
Now, yeah,
they're going to win 2 out of 3. They're going to sweep somebody they probably shouldn't on the road when their offense is struggling, and it's going to happen. And weird things happen in baseball. It's baseball. You play 162 games. You have a sample size this large. Weird stuff happens. It happens far less in football because they only play 17 games a year. Like, if you played 17 baseball games a year, weird stuff wouldn't really happen very often. But when you play 162 of them, which if you take football, that's 9 years of football. Like if you took 9 seasons of your favorite NFL team and you said, hey, did they win or lose 5 games that were really weird in those 9 years? Yeah, they did. Baseball does that every year. Every year, that's the amount of baseball games they play. So plus the playoffs, and the playoffs go on forever too. So like this is just a lot of baseball. A lot of weird things happen. I'm not gonna be too worried about it.
Let's finish up Cubs versus Angels tonight. Fingers crossed the weather cooperates for the game to take place. Jameson Taillon will be on the bump for the Cubs. I don't know how you feel about this, Jason, but I do believe from the mental side of things for Jameson Taillon, these first few starts will be kind of huge for him from that mental aspect. You have to remember Justin Steele is going to be joining the show. He's going to be joining this thing in progress at some point down the road this season. you have other options if you need to pivot due to performance or due to injury. I don't put a lot of stock into much of anything with spring training, but when we're seeing the velocity continue to drop with Jameson Taillon, that's something that kind of puts up a little bit of a red flag. When we're seeing the home runs are still being allowed at a rapid pace, that's a little bit of a red flag. Just wondering, like, does Jameson Taillon need to show in these first few starts that, like, hey, I've got gas left in the tank, like I'm good to go? And it I don't think it's going to be like an incredibly short leash, but if these struggles continue, I kind of go back to there's a Ben Brown, there's a Colin Ray, there's a Jackson Wiggins who's not on your major league roster, but he is certainly waiting in the wings. Justin Steele's going to join this thing at some point. I just think these first few starts for Jameson Taillon, just for the individual and sort of the mental psyche, are going to be big for him because the struggles this spring and the home run issue, we highlighted it with Shota a lot post All-Star break last year, but Jameson Taillon early on in the season last year, he went through a pretty prolonged stretch where he was giving up home runs at a pretty astounding rate. And so you hope the tick down in velo that we saw this spring at times was just him sort of working it through and getting the arm primed and ready for the season. And again, I don't think it'll be a really, really short leash with Jameson Taillon, but if those struggles persist, the Cubs are built in a way where they can pivot to other options.
Yes. Yeah, and that's kind of what you're hoping for out of that. Velocity was up a little bit on his last spring training start, which gives you a little bit of hope. Cubs did mention that he was kind of working through some like lower body stuff. So that can sap velocity. That's where you're getting a lot of push off. So I think you got concerns there, which I do. It's at least like, I guess my fallback is like, all right, listen, we're hearing that there was maybe an injury, and that's what I needed to hear. I needed to hear that there was maybe something wrong. If it's kind of like, oh, well, we're just kind of working through it, then that's I don't know what's going on here situation, and that's never good. If they can't give you something, so it felt like you were given something on it. We'll see what that comes out of. So running a couple of numbers today, 91 miles an hour is kind of a big deal for Jameson. And I think almost any pitcher, Shota Imanaga as well. This one goes out to Chris Langland. He's a former driveline instructor. Talked a little bit about him when I talked about Tetsuya Imai in the offseason. But Langland had kind of done a study on Shota Imanaga and how at 91 miles an hour, his fastball became so hittable that hitters were no longer offering kind of at the sweeper or the splitter. They just sat on the fastball so much because it just lost so many important parts of that characteristic that at even 92 miles an hour he had. So today I kind of just ran some numbers just on my own. And there seems to be, like, when you drop from like 93 to 92 to 91, each time you drop, there's about 10 points of WOBA and expected WOBA that goes along with that drop. And for somebody like Jameson Taillon, who got a lot of soft contact last year, but not a lot of whiffs, I think this is a bigger problem kind of in that Shota Imanaga area here, because if your kick changeup is his best pitch right now, and if players aren't going to offer on that and chase and hit weak contact on it, then they're going to sit fastball. And his fastball back to 2 years ago without that changeup was well above league average, the bad way, in terms of how his ex-WOBA was. Like, he was getting it hit pretty good, and that was without the kick change. Kick change shows up last year. All of a sudden, WOBA down significantly. Ex-WOBA sitting up there. So he's still giving up hard contact, but it wasn't really landing. But he was able to control a lot of the hard contact with that kick change. He comes in this year. He's throwing 91 miles an hour. And hitters are not offering that kick change. And they're sitting there and they're pounding that fastball. Somebody strikes out under 19% of hitters. That's 3% under league average. It's not good. So you have a low whiff, bad fastball pitcher. He's probably not long for the Cubs at that point. When you consider the depth, not really a candidate for the bullpen. I know Cubs fans and internet fans love to play we'll just phantom injury him. He'll go to Iowa and work on it. He's not going to go do that. He's a major league player. The MLBPA is not going to allow him to do that. He's not going to do that. He's a free agent next year. Last thing he wants is everybody thinking he's hurt. So Like they'll have to make a decision at that point because he's kind of like a fringy starter right now. I think at 92 miles an hour, doesn't matter how good or bad you are, he's a major league pitcher. You put him as a 5, he's going to be fine for the Chicago Cubs if they're trying to win the division. I think that margin though is pretty razor thin. I think it's like 1 mile an hour. If he's sitting at 91, if he's sitting in God forbid the high 90s, like 90.8, 90.9, I think that's a red flag. So I'm going to be paying attention to the velocity tonight. If it's like 91.8, and it's kind of a chilly, weird, wet night, I'll take that. That's going to sign to me that lower body, we're back. We could still be useful. If I'm seeing numbers that are like 90.8, I'm concerned, and I'll be worried about that because he gave up a lot of hard contact this spring, a lot of hard contact to Panama, who's not good. He gave up a lot of hard contact in spring training, which is not great to see. And I'm willing to kind of forgive a lot of those things if I see fastball velocity, if I see shape, if I see something impressive. Like Shota gave up some home runs, but it's Arizona. The ball flies out there like crazy, but his fastball velocity was up. It was all good. I wasn't all that worried. Jameson, I felt different the entire time. So I'm going to be paying attention to the velo tonight. If the velo is good, I think they'll be all right. Jose Siriano is nasty.
Speaking of velo.
Speaking of velo, like Jose Siriano is a pretty good hitter. Pitcher, sorry.
Hit 100, by the way. He's already pitched once this year, Jason, real quick. He hit 100 a couple times, topped out at 101.3 against the Astros. 6 innings, no runs, 7 punch outs, 19 whiffs on 91 pitches in his first start for the Angels. So we talk about velo with Jameson Taillon, where it's going to be at. For those who aren't familiar with Jose Soriano, and obviously the Cubs aren't meeting up with the Angels a whole hell of a lot year in and year out, so you might not be familiar with the name. You're going to see a guy who can absolutely gas up the fastball.
Yeah, he can gas up the fastball, and he can gas up the sinker too. The sinker that's his best pitch probably. It's a gnarly pitch. He got 42% whiffs on a sinker. 42% whiffs on a sinker against the Houston Astros. He's throwing that thing 98 miles an hour, and it maintains velocity. He's still sitting at 98 on the 4-seam into the 6th, 96.9 into the 6th on the sinker. And he's got a nasty knuckle curve that sits at 87 in the first inning, which got 73% whiffs. He's a good pitcher, and he looked really, really, really good against the Astros. Was it a good first start? I don't know. Last year he gave up a lot of hard contact. Makes sense. He gives up balls on the ground with the sinker. He's gonna hit balls on the ground. The Cubs weren't necessarily a great sinker team last year. Like, it wasn't like their strong suit. So we'll see how they end up doing, against him tonight. I don't think he's going to make life easy on him. So I think this is probably going to be a night where you're going to have to manufacture runs, assuming they play. But this is probably a good night for like PCA to be bunting. Probably a good night for Alex Bregman and Nico Hoerner to find ways on. Nico Hoerner
shooting it the other way. Yeah.
Moises Ballesteros putting it in play. Matt Shaw maybe putting it in play, kind of getting some speed out there. He's not particularly good against right-handed sinkers last year. Yeah, we'll see what he's like this year if he's kind of learned on that. But it's going to be an interesting night. I also think that maybe it's probably a night that maybe you have to lean on some of the lefties. Like Moises Ballesteros feels like he's probably pretty important tonight. As Soriano is willing to throw the slider to the lefties, and the sinker's not going to be as good against the lefty. So, maybe Michael Busch, maybe Moises Ballesteros. These guys are maybe kind of pretty important for night too. So we'll see. I think this will probably be our first low-scoring affair. If the Cubs are going to win this one, I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. If the runs are coming hard and heavy, it's probably coming at the expense of Taillon. So, I think if at the end of the day, it's you're betting the under, the Cubs probably take that one. I think if you're betting the over, it's probably an Angels win. And I'm not rooting against that. I'm not rooting for it, but that'd be my concern on this is that if it's an overnight on the runs prediction, then we're probably in a not good place for the Cubs.
Over under is set at 7, which for those who don't bet is an extremely low total. If you're betting it like an extremely low total, if you're betting a baseball game. So the over under set at 7. A lot of that, as Jason just alluded to, has to do with Soriano on the bump. A lot of it, I was just looking 19 miles per hour blowing in from left field. So ball's probably not going to travel, not going to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll see. But it's Jameson Taillon, Jose Siriano. This has been another edition of the Northside Baseball Podcast, a live edition, which we will be doing more of through the season. As we record typically on Tuesdays, but would like to get some of these out before the games are played on Tuesday night, instead of recording Tuesday early evening and then a game gets played and then we publish on Wednesday. Make sure
to us in the morning.
Yeah, so make sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, whether it's via the YouTube channel or if you're listening back later on via another outlet. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Woodmeyer, and as we said, this has been another edition of the Northside Baseball Podcast.